Hello! We took an extended break, but we're happy to be back. Unfortunately, we had to take a break because our good friend, family member, and fellow Dunderhead Andre Main passed away on December 31st, 2022 due to complications with COVID-19 and type 1 diabetes. We had originally planned on taking a small break before this happened to get a new table built and studio space put together, but understandably, it was a difficult time for us. So we took time, mourned as a group. But during that time, we came back together and did a 24-hour charity live stream in Andre's honor for the American Diabetes Association. We raised a little over $1,000 in his name, which is, for a community our size, frankly, insane. It's literally double what we thought we were going to be able to put together. We can't thank you guys enough. Also, during that time, we did wind up doing the new table and the new studio space. Our audio and overall production have gotten much better now, and instead of forcing you to trudge through audio so bad it's literally broken half the time, we've put together a summary for you to start with here. We're going to cover episodes 1 through 26, allowing you to pick up with us on episode 27 and know what's going on. We'll also be having a rebrand. Going forward, the campaign will be named The Queen's Rooks. We will keep the Fallen King series intact as its own playlist, but going forward with a name that reminds us of Andre's passing every time we get ready to play is a little difficult to keep the experience from being depressing. That said, don't be surprised if you see us have to take a moment from time to time. Just doing the setup and writing the summary took quite a bit out of us, so we hope you understand. And without further ado, let's get started. It's the summer solstice, people are celebrating, and the Guild Pack Games are upon Guild's Row. Sitting inside the Pride's Call Tavern is a man looking to enjoy the day, bring his friends together, and even possibly get them drunk enough to join him in the Guild Pack Games. As his friends trickle in, we meet our crew. Sail storms on a half-elf warlock, played by Colby, Bobo the Kenku Bloodhunter, played by Andre Main, Lolax the Changeling Sorcerer, played by Lizzie, Hush the Kenku Ranger, played by Jeremy, and Thak the Half-Orc Paladin, played by Sam. While the team gets sauced up, they begin to make plans for what they're going to do with the rest of the day in front of them. Eventually deciding to go watch the games, along the way there, the train overhead gets hit with a massive fireball. The slightly inebriated heroes step up and begin to fight the attackers that caused this, while stabilizing the train and getting people successfully out of the way into safety. Through the fighting, they find the one leading this attack is called the Ascendant. They are assisted by a notorious Minister of Impediments called Morgan Lamen. She offers to pay their guild pack license and become a sort of patron if they wish to participate in the games. Agreeing to this, the team regroups at the Pride's Call and asks Uncle V, the owner, and actual uncle of Sail, how they think they should proceed. Through a night of drinking and debating, they agree that they should take a few non-guild pack contracts as practice runs before the rescheduled games begin. Initially, they clear a crypt of undead when they run into an intelligent zombie that seemed to be leading them. While they dispatch the majority of the non-sentient undead, they leave the cobbled together one for questioning later, learning that the Ascendant had apparently made his base here and cobbled together a body for a ghost to pilot. Half the party goes to speak with the contact issuer and send a message to Morgan for backup. Taking the opportunity of the team being split, the zombie makes a run for it, jumping into a makeshift hatch leading in the sewers. Eventually recapturing the zombie, the team waits for Morgan and her team to respond, where they find the ghost piloting the meat suit has escaped. Luckily, there was a mountain of evidence left over for them to sift through. While digging through the evidence, Thak found a holy symbol that was almost painful to touch. While trying to commune with the symbol, he found that his patron, Aurelia, who was previously thought to be reforming in her home plane after being defeated during the Boros Schism, was in fact killed on her home plane. A permanent death by whatever entity was attached to the symbol. Wrestling with this, Thak returns the symbol into evidence, and the team returns to the tavern for a well-deserved rest. The next day, the crew decides to take on the Hogshead Gang, a gang of bomb-throwing, hog-riding goblins. This gang has taken over a few city blocks in the smelting quarter, forcing workers back into a defunct mine and smeltery, while holding their children hostage. The Azorius police haven't been able to push in any further due to the recent terrorist attacks. The gang has also made a defensive perimeter loaded with explosives and have threatened to level 4 city blocks if they even try. As such, it was the Azorius' plan to send a small strike force in to break the line or take the head off the snake. Bobo, being well versed with the city sewers, takes the team down below as a way of getting around the line. Once down there, they meet up with old mining tunnels where they can hear workers being pushed on by guards. Initially, they attempt to sneak up on the goblins, successfully dispatching the first one unnoticed, though on the second they fail the assassination, letting the goblin cry out in pain. alerting the others. One long, drawn-out fight later, the remaining goblins retreat back to the smeltery, but not before blowing up the tunnels behind themselves. Thak and Lolax have a heated discussion about Bastion, an untested sorcerer Thak saved from the Barrack North, and his involvement in battle. While they are obviously not ready. Rescuing the prisoners that were already down there, the group returns to the surface to plan a new angle of attack, but find that Morgan Le Mans has already taken over the Azori's operations. Giving a briefing to Morgan, they are told to rest for the evening in the medical tent. They're woken up only a couple hours later with a letter from the Ascendant, notifying them that they and the Hogshead gang are pulling out of the area, but in return are releasing the children and remaining adults at the same time. The letter also had some pretty blatant threats to Uncle V's life and the well-being of the Pride's Call Tavern. Not wanting to push the issue, the crew decided not to follow immediately. Having the children return, they speak with Morgan and decide to send Hush and Bobo on as a scouting crew, while the rest of them hightail it to the tavern. Lolax leaves disguised as Bobo to throw off any observers. Bobo, using his knowledge of the underground and the skiffs they had found previously leading to the undersea, deduced that they were probably at a place called the Stone's Causeway, a port run by Medusa. And since they didn't have a boat of their own, Bobo and Hush decide to hop into an empty barrel they found while invisible from each other and slide down a well in a public square to reach the underground river. The Kenku duo make to the port and see the Goblin Gang loading boxes of lead ingots and chains onto a ship. They sneak closer under invisibility to investigate, Bobo finding that the lower levels of the ship are filled with the same explosives the goblins had used earlier. Bobo sits and ponders what to do about this as Hush starts to look at the boxes closer to the ship. Getting dangerously close to the Ascendant, for a moment the Ascendant seems to have noticed Hush's location, and just as they were about to reach out towards him, Bobo ignites a fuse, going to the explosives, dropping his invisibility. This gives Hush enough time to back away from the Ascendant, pull his bow, and fire, to try and give Bobo cover to get away as well. Bobo had just enough time to dive into a rowboat nearby before the entire thing explodes. Unfortunately for them, the Ascendant still has enough time to launch a volley of attacks at each of them, downing them both. The ship explodes. Hush is caught by the Medusa on the dock and turned to stone, but the Ascendant and the entire crew of the ship are killed. While Bobo drifts down the stream, shrapnel sticking out of him fading into black, he's met with a low chuckle and a deal. He accepts. He will live, if only barely. After there's a rumbling coming from the ground, the topside crew took a moment to discuss amongst themselves what they should do, and came to the conclusion that none of them knew how to get to the Stone's Causeway to help. They had to go ask Uncle V for more information or contacts on how to even get down there in the first place, so they double-timed it back to the tavern. Once there, they are confronted by Bobo's Uncle Clang. Asking Bobo to come with them, it's revealed that Bobo is in fact Lolax, making the alchemist fire Clang was holding all the more easy to throw at the tavern. What was at first a serious problem became fairly trivial, as Sail just cast suggestion on Clang, instructing him to help put out the fire and stick around and wait for the guards. While trying to capture Clang legally, they sent for guards within Selesnya. This introduced us to a new character, played by Jeremy, Styx. Styx is an Owlin cleric that has been having prophetic dreams about a wounded crow being pulled into darkness. While assisting with detaining Clang, Styx is instructed to stay behind and assist with the paperwork needed for this. While taking statements, he learns of the teen's predicament and reveals he too has been looking for a guide to the Stone's Causeway, and though he has found one, they will not do business with him. While asking Styx in return on why he wants to go down there, he tells them of his dreams, and he feels that he is connected to their friend Bobo. Seeing Lolax in that form earlier, he can't help but to think of the crow in his dreams is the same as their friend. The topside crew decide to take Styx along with them on one condition, that they will introduce them to their attempted contact. While talking it over on the way there, it's revealed that the contact is Mother Talassa Vol, a sea hag matron of the Guild Rose Darkwater Coven, and Sail's former love interest. Sail, understandably distraught at this new information, tries to think of any other solution, but is eventually persuaded that this is the fastest way. Finding Talassa Vol displaced due to the recent terrorist attacks, they meet her in a bulwark room that they commandeered from the Azet. After some awkward dealings with Sail, they manage to get transportation, but in return he must come back and have a date with Talassa Vol. Traveling with her sea hag daughter, they are floated down to the Stone's Causeway, where they find a stone dock with a crater in it, a sunk shipping vessel, dead basilisk eel, and a pile of dead bodies that were caught in the aftermath. The Ascendant's tattered cloak and sword sit off to the side, so they know that this is at least finished. On the dock next to the crater is the most important thing though, a petrified Hush looking to be unconscious forever. Knowing they can't do anything for Hush at the moment, they continue on to hopefully find Bobo further downstream. The raft finally makes its home on the shores of a small Goliath community. After speaking with some of them, they find that Bobo is injured at the village elder's house. Speaking with the elder, they find that magical healing hasn't been effective, and that Bobo has been stuck in their lichen transformation this entire time. Styx, with the help of the party, deduces that Bobo's issue is lead shrapnel embedded in him from the explosion. Carefully, Styx removes the lead from Bobo's system, allowing the healing to work and stabilize him. Waking from their injuries, Bobo asks for Sayil, and admits to him quietly that he had made a deal with the same thing that had been taunting Thak since he picked up the Dark Amulet. Letting Bobo rest, the rest of the crew went to go communicate with their ride, only to find that the raft had left them. Seemingly as a last laugh from Talassa Vol. Speaking with some of the locals on how to return to the surface, they are told that the Fire and Ice ladies are from the surface and come here from time to time, having left for further into the Underdark to handle rampant Myconid activity. Leaving Bobo with the community, they take vague instructions and a rough map to delve deeper into the Underdark and hopefully find a guide out. The trip has a few interesting spots they manage to avoid getting caught in, but as they reach an area that has a landslide they need to get to the bottom of, most of them make it down, but Thak sets off an additional landslide and shunts the group into a cave mouth below. While trying to recover from the fall, they find a group of hostile Myconids having cornered a tiefling. Working with her, they dispatch the Myconids that seem to have some psionic powers. The tiefling is named Moxie. She is a member of an order called the Watchers. They specialize in tracking interplanar threats and dealing with the issue. She agrees to help them on one condition, that they first help her get her mentor back from where she is gone. They were separated by the Myconids, but she was sure she could find them. Agreeing to the terms, the team trudges on, digging their way out of the landslide and avoiding more Underdark creatures. The team eventually makes it to a Snurfnebelin town called Bafflestone. The town had just been attacked by Myconids and Duergard, but luckily casualties were low. While investigating the area, Thak noticed an odd movement in one of the Duergar's skull, cutting it open to reveal an intellect devourer that attacked Thak on sight. The team managed to blast down the monster, but not before Thak was reduced to a catatonic state. Down another team member, they request to leave Thak here at the town and agree to pick him up on their way back. With the assistance of Moxie, they track down the Myconids down to a cave system a little ways away, finding a Myconid sovereign being puppeteered by a mind flayer who has attached himself to their head, thus controlling the entire colony. Standing by, having their mind dominated as well as Jehri, the white dragonborn mentor of Moxie. The team sneaks in and fires a surprise opening salvo. The battle is quick and dirty, but they manage to kill the mind flayer, but not without also killing the sovereign. Having killed the mind flayer, the colony, other prisoners, and Jehri are freed from their control. Looking into the area, they find a rift having been opened to the astral sea. Peering through it, they can quickly see alien contraptions and the smell of death. Deciding not to investigate any further, they instead work on closing the portal. This takes some time and almost sucks Lolax in with it as it closes, but they manage it without taking any more casualties. The team makes the trek back to the Goliath village, picking up Thak still in a vegetative state along the way. Then they collect Bobo and make their way back to the surface. As a thank you from the Watchers, the next morning a cleric of their order is dispatched to heal Thak of his condition. While in that state, we learn Thak has been forced to rewatch the death of Aurelia, his father and squad mates while in the Boros, by the entity that was behind the unholy symbol. With Thak recovered, they talk on where to go from here. The Guildpact Games are only a day away. They eventually agree on continuing with the games, mainly as a way to raise money and buy Hush's freedom from the Golgari. Styx is persuaded to join the team as well, rounding out the team once again. Before making it to the games though, they are met with Morgan, who asks what happened in the causeway, later informing them that both Hush and Bobo have large bounties on their head as domestic terrorists. The next morning they file under the arena with the other contestants. While killing time, they introduce themselves to some of the more colorful characters around. The participants are ushered to the arena floor and meet the guild leaders as would-be heroes. We learn that the Guildpact Games have 3 tests that the guilds have worked on together. To succeed in the games, you must win the vote of at least 5 of the 9 guilds. The tests include axe beaks as stand-ins for civilians that must be saved from giant boars, a watertight chamber with filling water that must be fixed while dealing with a monster, and an interview portion where big players amongst the guilds and town can ask hot topic questions of the team. The team seem to have done well all throughout, though at the very end, the Rakdos court jester asked why their team was associated with terrorists. Bobo tried to defend why he did what he did, but the team dragged him from the podium before he could make his point. After leaving the arena, the team split up on various interests. Lolax, who was just trying to relax in the calm before the storm at the tavern, was rudely interrupted as, lo and behold, Hush opened the doorway. The two caught up, and Hush explained that Matron Cabas, Bobo's old tormentor, and the one who had forcibly changed his body to be the monstrous mutant it is today, had simply paid the 1,000 gold for Hush's release, apparently as a favor to Bobo, simply asking Hush to tell him they would like to meet. Fearing for Bobo's safety, the two took Sputnik, Uncle V's Iron Defender hound, and tried to track him down. While on the way there, they ran into Sail, who was also looking for Bobo. Though with Sail's keen eyes, he had noticed that a different monstrous Kenku, Clang, was following them. A brief scuffle began, and Clang managed to slip away, but took Sputnik with him. Sail, figuring out where Bobo would be staying, quickly ran to go inform him, while the other two went back to the tavern to try and intercept the rest of the team. Sputnik was left safe and sound by the beach, where Clang was looking out to the sea, staring at a small rowboat Bobo was bunkering down in. After some back and forth between Sail and Clang, they came to a conclusion that Clang was really just concerned for a family member, and asked Bobo to come to shore. The discussion was short, but Clang warned Bobo that Nagma, also known as Matron Cabas, was looking for his blood, and that they have work for him to do to pay off his bounty. Bobo was uninterested on all counts, to which Clang left. Meeting at the tavern where the rest of the team was, Lolax shares with the team that he got a letter from the Dimir, the secret 10th guild of the city. In short, the letter gives them a riddle the team must decipher. Thinking that it leads to the pendant, the team heads there to speak with the staff of the college. They meet a necromancer professor named Abrin Hurry, who can crack the cipher for them at a steep cost. While not enjoying her tone or greed, they eventually concede, paying her with magical items and services to be rendered later. The cracked cipher then told them Nordal has ascended, Nordal being a dwarf captain in the Boros that Thak knows personally. From there, they make their way to the Orzhov Church, where they see a few other guild pack members milling about. Gunning for the top of the bell tower, the gang gets into some trouble, where Lolax manages to climb into the top penthouse, steal a significant amount of gold while invisible, and where Bobo climbs up the side of the church, being scared by a ghost in the process and having to retreat. Eventually, though, Stick flies up on silent wings, handing in their letter, being officially passed into the Guild Pact. Morgan congratulates the team and shows them to their new offices in the Guild Pact Hall. He then presents them with a plethora of jobs to choose from, where they obviously take the highest paying one. It won't start for another week, but that actually works out since she also has a personal favor to ask. While they are in Adwick, could they please check in on her cousin, the Queen of Veldan, who's having some troubles with children going missing in a neighboring town. We then break into a montage-styled time-lapse of the next week where the party checks in on loose ends. Namely, Bobo saved and befriended a lion kept by the Rakdos. Thak confronted Bartleby Beauregard with connections to his father's disappearance. He was promptly turned into a guinea pig and flushed down into the sewers for his insolence, managing to avoid damaging himself too poorly throughout the journey. He wound up in a transfer station room used by the Azet. Speaking to an older man on the other side of the door, Talim, Thak is eventually released by promising a good night's sleep and some food at the Pride's Call. Bobo and Sail leave to commune with Sail's patron on the full moon, discussing with Madra and the two Valkyrie sisters of Aurelia about what has been happening in Guild's Row. Their collective anger at the situation spawned the first storm this season, creating a torrential downpour. Having some important questions answered, they return back, but not before they're ambushed by a gun-wielding assassin. A long, drawn-out fight and chase scene begins with the assassin changing their form as they go, confusing the two. Eventually, Bobo is dropped and dies before Sail can get close enough to heal him. Meanwhile, Bastion, Thak's young ward, broke down the door to his room, emerging as a massive Black Paw werewolf, a result of the full moon after his first kill back in the beginning of the campaign. A brief fight occurs, but Lolax eventually managed to break through to them for but a moment. That caused them to run away instead of continue fighting. Thak tried to chase him but couldn't keep up. Sail returns with Bobo's body and tries to get Styx to bring him back to life. There's an ethical dilemma in the group, as they are unsure if Bobo would even want to return. Styx communes with his deity Kelemvor, who tells him that Bobo is needed to go forward, and advises that revival is the best course. Styx, confused by this, since it goes by Kelemvor's normal teachings, has a crisis of faith, calling Kelemvor a hypocrite. Thak, having his own crisis of faith, puts on the unholy symbol he had found in the crypt earlier. He tells the entity associated with it that he is broken. Thak becomes an oathbreaker, swearing a new allegiance to this entity and betraying his friends. While everybody else sleeps, he creeps into the room where Lolax was sitting vigil with Bobo. He takes a hammer and bashes his head in, leaving him alive but unconscious. Thak then steals Bobo's body and brings Leonard the Lion with him. Waking up hours later, Lolax warns the group that Bobo and Thak are both missing. Searching for Leonard the Lion using the Locate Creature spell, as it was assumed Leonard left with Bobo, they track him to Sunhome, a large Boros keep within Guild Row. Speaking with the guards gets them nowhere, but they do receive some unexpected help from Yolov Triel, Morgan's co-worker and the Azorius Minister of Fallacies. He advised that the group work with him and his protege Brunton, played by Sam, that they could get into the keep simply by showing his badge. The next morning, with a squad of investigators and arresters in tow, the remaining team gained entry to Sunhome and to Nordal, the captain there, volunteering for a zone of truth that he obfuscated through intentionally misinterpreting questions. The team eventually narrowed him down to yes or no questions, which he chose not to answer. His lack of answer told them that Bobo had been there in some sort of capacity, and Nagma had been there with him as well. Yolov, seeing that there is some probable cause to continue investigating, leaves Brenton with the team to continue helping track down leads while he confers with Morgan. Speaking with Leonard the Lion, as Sail does, he tells them a bird woman, matching Matron Cabs' description, took Bobo's body with Thak towards where the dead trees are. They went towards where the dead trees are, but quickly realized that Leonard had just used that as a direction. Correcting course towards the river, Sail communed with the spirit inside, only to find out that the river spirit is Talasaval. Cutting straight to the point, they went and spoke with Talasaval about finding Bastion. Since they weren't sure they could handle Matron Cabas without help, and it's confirmed that she has Bobo. Talasaval wasn't sure where Bastion was, but did agree that if they were to find Bastion and keep him safe, the party would have to procure and deliver a basilisk eel egg to replace the eel that Bobo and Hush had killed with the explosion of the Ascendant ship. In lieu of getting an egg, Sail would have to give Talasaval a meeting with his patron, Majra. Returning to the Pride Skull Tavern, they met a new friend that was looking for Thak. Sen, played by Andre. They are a centaur paladin missing his horse lower half. To make up for this, he rides a skateboard around, pushing himself with his hands. Speaking with Sen, the party finds that he had been in contact with a mutual friend about Thak's well-being, wanting to meet up and check in on him, as well as give him information on the Boros schism group called the Heralds. On hearing of Thak's betrayal to the party, Sen volunteers to assist with the party in his stead. Reporting to their office to meet with Uncle V, Morgan, and Yolov, they all come to the agreement that it might be best for the party to continue with their Guild Pact mission. The team ties up loose ends before they leave, and it's revealed to the audience that Brenton is not who he says he is, and is instead a Dimir spy within the Azorius. Meeting at Pendant University, Morgan told them that she had pulled in a few favors and got access to the teleportation circle to Adwick. Saying their farewells, they take the gut-turning leap across the world, appearing in the Emerald Tomes, with an older elven man named Medes the Broken. Medes quickly briefed them on the situation while walking across town to the Queen's Keep, telling them of a civil war going on as an explanation as to why the Queen could not divert more resources towards the issue in Grossmont. Originally they were to meet with the steward at the keep, but were instead surprised to find a flash in the throne room, and to meet a battle-worn and bedraggled Abigail herself, still in armor. Giving more details on the issue at hand, it came up that Hush's brother Twang had originally taken this mission before it was given to the Broken Wings, though it had been some time since he had reported in. Taking this as all the more reason to proceed, the team acquired some horses from the stables and headed out immediately. While on their way to Grossmont, they encountered the surrounding forest called the Whispering Woods, a place filled with trees that seemed to shift and sway unnaturally, will-o-wisps that floated through the air at night. Having to camp outside Ferryman's house before crossing the Rashway Lake to Grossmont, the party was met with some odd visions of their greatest insecurities and failures. In the morning, they asked the ferryman to take them across the lake. He refused, revealing that there was some odd happenings that seemed to be centered around the island in the middle of the lake. Sail, being an avid sailor, took helm of the rowboat. Styx played lookout by flying above and spotted a large shape moving rapidly towards the boat. Quickly returning to his friends, he warned them and cast Water Walk on the party just before they were attacked. A massive salamander came up out of the water and crashed down onto the boat. The salamander was covered in rot-infested decay with black and purple nebulous energy coming from where its eyes should be. The fight was intense and included Lolax getting disrobed, Hush being quote-unquote shamued, and Sen rail sliding on waves into a kickflip and socking the salamander in the face. Eventually, they drove off the creature with Lolax yelling at it, hobbling the boat back together. They eventually managed to make it to the other side of the shore and to Grossmont. Running into the mayor there, they tried to ask him some pertinent questions about what's been happening. The mayor looked perplexed as to what they were even talking about, not remembering that children were missing and barely even remembering Twang, only that he advised him to talk to the old coot north of town. Onto an old rundown cottage. Inside was a crazy gnome man wearing a lead pot as a hat, a half-elven woman with red hair, and Twang injured on the bed in the room. After a tense discussion with the other people in the cottage, it was revealed that Twang had been found injured by a woman near a place called the Meeting Tree, and that she had even brought him back here just to care for him. With some healing from sticks, he was tired, but he would make it. Twang and Hush began to catch up while Sail and Lolax pored over Twang's journal. In the pages, it showed that he had realized he was experiencing memory loss. Twang detailed their theories about what was going on, as well as expressing their feelings about what was going on inside their head. An issue they found was a few missing pages around the same time Eslaine, the half-elven woman, had made an appearance. Twang and Hush's conversation became a little more tense as Hush relayed his past adventures with the group, including his brief time as a statue. Twang, concerned to say the least, asked Hush if he would like to join him in his current task at hand, if only he could remember what it was. As the group pored over and theorized what was going on, it quickly turned to night. Having to rest, they found themselves having a few heart-to-hearts about how they were doing. In that conversation, it was revealed that Sen had cast Channel Divinity and found Brenton registered as undead. Concerned with this, they confronted Brenton, only to find out it was news essentially only to him. The majority of the group had deduced it on their own. Sail, wanting to help clear the air, cast Identify on Brenton. He had a high-level Create Undead spell cast on him. Brenton then went to explain that he had been hurt when he was younger and required special care. This caused him to lose the majority of his memories. Sen, not knowing if he was telling the truth or not, warned him to keep his nose clean. The next morning they went to a place called the Meeting Tree, mentioned in Twang's journal. Eslaine explained that the Meeting Trees are supposed to be way anchors for a group of nomadic Eladrin that travel on elemental islands. This allows them a safe route back from wherever they are. Having to contend with some monsters along the way, they did manage to make it to the tree, only to find that it was covered in a large swarm of spider webs. Having to fight their way through crypt spiders, spiders that control undead bodies, acting like nesting dolls, the party makes it to the trunk. Entering the doorway built into the side of the tree, they find the inside of it is hollow and has a shrine inside. After some investigating, it appears that the shrine is not as it seems. Dispelling the illusion around it, they find that the inside of the tree is infested with ettercaps and protected by a Naga. The Naga attacked them, and during the battle, they took over Brenton's mind, causing him to betray the party, stabbing Hush in the back. Brenton was released from the Naga's control shortly after, but was then knocked down by a bolt of lightning that went through the entire party. The rest of the team finished off the Naga, but upon reviving Brenton, he bit Hush, who was only trying to give him a hug, telling him it was okay. Hush immediately forgave him, but Sen took notice. As if biting team members wasn't bad enough, Brenton then revealed that he was in fact a double agent for the Dimir, named Kex. Before they could hash out what had just happened, the ettercaps from above started to descend, waking up after the Naga's death. Choosing to barricade the opening to the tree outside with mold earth, they then had a back and forth about whether to burn the tree or not, ultimately deciding to leave it alone so the Eladrin might have a way home someday. Before they could leave the clearing, though, they encountered a blood raven. Ravens with crimson underpinnings supposedly blessed by the Raven Queen to be able to tell prophecy. The group asked a few rounds of questions to it while bartering with food, and learned a handful of things from it. Sail was a prince of an elven court that he did not know of. Kex had two different types of monstrous blood in him that were seemingly at odds. Lolax's mother died from their own patron, and the things that eat dreams was on the island in the middle of Rashway Lake. Broken Wings left the clearing and headed further into the Whispering Woods in an attempt to find a safe place to rest for the night. Tension seemed to die down while they were setting camp. Twang and Hush took first watch so they could speak about the future, Twang urging Hush to come with him and Eslaine after the mission was over. That left Kex and Sen on second watch, where they had a brief conversation about why Kex was lying to the party and attacking them. Kex tried to explain that he hadn't wanted to attack the party, but he had been mind-controlled. Sen tried to grab him and scare him into telling the truth, but Kex managed to slip away, yelling and alerting the rest of the party. Once everyone was awake, they separated Kex and Sen to speak with them. Eventually mending things well enough that the two could work together, they rested and then proceeded back to Grossmont. On arriving there, they found that most of the townsfolk did not remember them at all, and the mayor was missing one of his attendants. Leaving the town, since they weren't going to get any more information, they elected to rest on the bank of the lake that night. In the morning, It seems as though the odd mind-altering effect that had been working its way through the woods cleared Hush, Sen, and Kex of the last 2 days, forgetting the confrontation they had previously, though still with the knowledge that Brenton, quote-unquote, was undead. Not having time to deal with this, the party pushed forward on the rowboat, where they again encountered the Salahammer. This time they killed it, not allowing it to run, but at the cost of the rowboat. Luckily, due to Lolax's quick thinking during the fight, they had managed to freeze some of the water into a mini iceberg that they then paddled to the island in the center of the lake. Once there, they found a rundown hut with a tea set ready. Sitting at the table was a familiar form, a Nagbug, though this one was much larger than Matron Cavis. He introduced himself as Elder Atis, and thanked the team for retrieving his daughter Eslaine. Confused, the party turned to her, and it was as if a fog had lifted from her. She warned them that he was dangerous and not to be trusted. After some back and forth, it was revealed the party had caught him just before he was leaving. He would be happy to let them have the children, and all the things below, if they were willing to let him leave with his research. Understandably, they refused. Lolax launched out with an earthen grasp, catching him, forcing him to activate a pendant around his neck, teleporting him away. Eslaine then explained that she had been his quote-unquote keeper, but when Twang came poking around the island, he had altered his memory so he wouldn't remember finding anything. Then, she had willingly let Elder Atis reprogram her mind before sending her to distract Twang away from the island. She was a bad liar, and that she wouldn't need to lie if she thought she was telling the truth. Eslaine then submitted herself to whatever punishment they wanted to give her for her actions, but that in traveling with Twang and the party, she had subconsciously had a change of heart. She warned that the monster-eating Dreams was a Morkoth that had its lair under the island. She was willing to assist them retrieving the kids and then turn herself into the queen. They did just that. Rounding the kids up after dealing with some remaining threats on the island, they found that the children had been altered in some way. While physically fine enough considering what had happened to them, some of them were registering oddly under detect magic. The party guarded them through the journey, eventually returning to Adwick, and that's where we had left off. But that means we now have to have the discussion about what we're going to do going forward. Andre's gone. A member of our little family that meant so much to us. As a group, we talked about how we were going to move forward with this. Would one of us pick up his character until we could find the right place to say goodbye? Would we just act like his character had a change of heart and left and not address it anymore? Neither of those felt like the correct decision. We didn't want to muddy Andre's legacy. He loved his character very much and put so much work into them. Even when tensions were high in the last couple sessions, before we broke for the holidays, he was very excited about that drama that had unfolded. So, we figured just talking to you guys would probably be the best way to proceed. We're going to go ahead and outline what Sen is doing with his life from here on out. Upon reaching Adwick, the party returned to the Queen's Castle immediately, telling Medes to fetch her. Things in the Whispering Woods were far worse than they had expected. Shortly, Abigail returned and spoke with the crew. Hearing how bad things were, she agreed it was largely out of the party's pay grade. Instead, enlisting the help of her twin brother, Twang, Eslaine, and if he would join them, Hush. Seeing as it was too late to move out now, they would wait until morning, giving the party time to discuss their next steps. During that conversation, Sen told them that he wanted to stay and protect the children, as they were the most innocents affected. They also reminded him of his kids back home. Agreeing with this, Sen took his leave, but not before telling them he would drop off anything important at the pride's call. He then left to look after the kids, and make sure that they were settling in well. From there, Sen would go see the team off in the morning, wishing them luck. Taking up his mace, returning to the lake with Hush and the Queen. Knowing the way that they went under the island, that Abigail and her brother don't remember being there in the first place. They eventually did battle with the Morkoth. The battle was long and harrowing, but they were eventually victorious. Sen and Hush gathered quite a bit of loot that Elder Atis had been paying the Morkoth with. They stayed on the island for quite some time, scouring over with a fine-tooth comb, finding quite a bit of evidence to pass on to their friends when they got back to the pride's call. Sen, Eslaine, and Hush regathered the children and escorted them back home to the town, full of parents and guardians who were overjoyed to have their kids return to them. This is where Sen parted ways. Returning home via the teleportation circle, richer with more information, he collected his kids from his ex-wife, showing that he could afford to give them a better life. Putting up his mace and just appreciating what he now had. Sen will forever live the life Andre wanted him to succeed in, which very simply was just to be a family man at the end of it all. So, where does that put us now? Now, we gather back with the party saying their goodbyes to Hush, before they leave for the Morkoth encounter, as the rest of the team prepares for whatever journey is in store for them on the Sunset Squall in the Mist Sea. And just as a last note, we love you guys very much and thank you for understanding and sticking with us.